All right. Hey, everybody. We're going to be talking today about Chapter 7, which is Finding Common Ground. And there, as all of these chapters have been, this one is another one filled with great insights on coaching, but also life. So if you want, I'll share my screen. And I know we've got one maybe driving, so if you can't do it, that's fine. But I'll share my screen. We can just talk about, hop in here in the Menti if you want. What's on your mind from this chapter, or from what's going on around you right now? We already kind of talked a little bit before pushing record about the quarantine that is starting to lift and how it's different in all of the places. So if you want to pop in some thoughts there, what's been on your mind this week? Our number for this week, I'm going to put this, I figured out, I didn't know I could do this, but I figured out that you can put the code in and then I can give you a link, 18821. It might be easier to just grab this link from the chat box. There. All right, so a couple of things coming up on the Menti. We've only got a few people in the room today, so but one of the things that is coming up is how to best prepare for supporting teachers for next year, even with so many unknowns. How to get teachers engaged in summer PD with PLCs. And then it continues to be about how we honor and respect our conversation partners. Are we truly curious, or are we in the conversation? Are we in the conversations with our own motives? So those are all three really great kind of different things that are on our minds. I know that everybody's definitely thinking about preparing for next year and how to work with teachers. One thing that I'm also worried about is onboarding brand new teachers to our school. We definitely have some vacancies that we're still trying to fill. And so they're not even hired yet. So I don't know how I'm still trying to process how we're going to be able to support them, because even if I partnered them up with a mentor, their mentor has never experienced this either. No one has. So yeah. So who else is wondering about preparing teachers, and what's been on your mind with that?
Well, we just had I had an email today from our staff of our principal asking everybody's opinion and thoughts on making professional development more of a choice board type thing. Where do you need to grow? What do you need to do? Kind of that whole idea of that. So, and then she mentions my name, and Mary Jane's going to be working on that. And I have been a little bit. So I was like, oh boy. So the panic mode set in. About 20 minutes ago. So
Absolutely. It all falls on us as the coach to figure out how to differentiate for everybody on our faculty, right? Yeah.
Sorry about Emmett in the background, but we got a couple things that goes through. We have a couple things that we're working on because we're excited about this, but we're switching to NWEA for our testing next year. And that's going to be new for all the secondary teachers and a majority of the elementary teachers. So trying to get that ready. We're also trying to come up with, while our county supports Schoology, we don't have a lot in our district familiar with it. So we're going to stick with Google Classroom and coming up with, so everyone can set it up the same to make it easier for parents, trying to keep that in mind. And then how are we going to give them the information that they need with the changes and so it's just, I think there's 3 different district plans right now, and my counterpart and I are just trying to think of what will be best for teachers and getting some insight from them about what they want and what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think what I find is that even when you ask teachers what they want to learn about, they often don't know how to articulate what it is that they want to learn / need to learn. Like there's just this kind of gap between what they need to know and what they know that they need to know. They don't realize that there's something that they may need to learn about. And so they can't say to you, I need to learn whatever this is, because they don't know about it yet. And it kind of goes back to Jim Knight's knowledge gap. I think, is that what he calls it? Or he mentioned it in a different chapter, where you know something and you're so familiar with it that you don't even know why other people don't know it yet. And I think that's a hard thing about, I want to incorporate choice and voice in everything that we're doing, but sometimes teachers don't know what they need. And that doesn't mean we know what they need, but they don't know what to request. And so saying, hey, tell me what you want may not always work. I like the choice word idea.
We did send a survey, and we gave suggestions both for instructional technology as well as instructional skills with working for students to kind of, give them some ideas of what they may want. And we're getting some good feedback from that.
That's good. Yeah, I think that you start with the survey for sure. It's just a matter of, there's usually some things that are outside of that too. That's awesome.
And I think we were thinking that we were going to have definitely a choice board, but there are some items that are not necessarily choices just because we have district initiatives. And there are things that you have to have professional development. We're going to Schoology, so we definitely need something with that. We have some state things that are coming down. So that's, I'm on a committee to help the state. We're rewriting our all of our standards. It's very interesting because of COVID.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's crazy what they're doing, and kind of fine tuning them to priority standards. So if this happens again, you have priority standards. So
yeah, and I think so, but that's happening in your district. So that's something that we're going to have to ask our teachers to do by grade level as a grade level team, because I work in independent schools. So it's just 2 teachers to a team, for them to decide what their priority standards would be, and then us really working from there. So same thing, but not at a huge, large scale level. How to balance schedule making and reactions to changes in long-term schedules, guide through changes. Yeah, that actually is on my mind as well, because we have a whole new schedule we were proposing for our lower school so we could have more time for balanced literacy. But now we're working on these COVID potential schedules that could be completely different start and end times, or scatter, or we're calling them like delayed, or alternating entry points, because we have different divisions coming in: high school, lower school, middle school. So yeah, I'm kind of like running parallel right here. I'm like, here's the schedule in the ideal world, but the ideal world is not likely going to happen. So yeah, so I don't know who else was working on schedules. You're working on schedules too. Awesome, Mary Jane. And then I launched 2 summer PLCs with teachers, which I'm really excited about how they're going. I've only had 1 or 2 meetings with them, and I got a good turnout. I wasn't sure who was going to volunteer for a summer PLC, but what happened is Florida is renewing, and they're making everybody have 40 hours of reading to renew their certificate. And so they need some kind of PD in this topic. And so I'm trying to facilitate that, but I'm trying to use books for the book study that are going to facilitate big thinking, that would probably start to facilitate some change. And so far it's been good, but I'm just still continuing to think about making it engaging, because we're doing it virtually. But you guys have taught me a lot. Our time together over the past almost 8 weeks has really been a great experience of, doing the virtual book study together. So
Allison, would you want to share the books that you are doing with your PLCs?
Absolutely. I can put them in the chat too, but the one that I'm doing with the high school and middle school teachers is called Book Love. And it's by Penny Kittle. Here, I'll put it up on the. It is really great, because it is great for a high school, middle school teacher because it really kind of has that, and we're a college prep school, so it has that college prep mindset where you realize that students are going to need a certain amount of stamina to be successful in college with their reading. And it also talks a lot about balancing literature instruction, which is often English teachers love to teach the literature, but then also creating a love of reading with an independent reading program inside. It's about creating a culture of reading within the school. And so far, just the first 3 chapters that we've read have sparked a lot of great discussion among those teachers because we have a very literature heavy curriculum. It's just kind of the way that this school's always had it. And so starting to shift their thinking about other ways that we can incorporate reading for pleasure, and then that building that stamina helps them be more successful with reading the harder, more complex texts that the literature is.
Would you recommend that for lower grade teachers as well?
So for lower grade teachers, there are a couple of others that are better fit. We're focusing on guided reading for the lower grade teachers. So we're talking about Daily 5. That's not really, we're reading a couple of different excerpts, but Daily 5 is definitely the one that I'm working on with them. Are you familiar with the Daily 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've taught it for years.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So there's that, but then there's also trying to make sure. Donald and Miller. We want that same approach, but for the younger students or middle school students, these 2 right here, The Book Whisperer and Reading in the Wild, these are a little bit more towards the elementary, middle school reader and teacher. And honestly, Book Love, could, but it's going to work. That one, Book Love, is written by a high school teacher, so she comes from that perspective. But if you haven't read the Donald and Miller ones, those are great. Very good. Book Whisperer is the first one, I think, and then Reading in the Wild is the more recent one. You're familiar with those?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, I think I've gotten off topic. Sorry. So, what else is over here on the Minty that we wanted to say? Are we truly curious, or are we bringing those motives into our questioning? That been on your mind, Shelley?
Am I on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Am I mute or am I not mute? I just think that is probably my largest takeaway from this book as a whole, that I'm now thinking when I go into all conversations, even this morning, I'm having a conversation with my girlfriend and I'm just praying, like, let me be curious. Let me really hone in on what we are talking about rather than waiting for myself to be able to say something. And I just look back over my conversations with my teachers and I want that to be known, what I'm known for. Am I really curious? Do I go into each conversation with inquiry rather than, what am I here to teach you about? What am I here to give to you? I want to hear your perspective. And I just think that that's been a huge mind shift for me in this book. And when I first came into coaching this year, it's like, oh, I'm here to give my wisdom away to these teachers. And it's like, no, that's not really it at all. And I have so enjoyed every single chapter. And this chapter, again, finding common ground, just brought us right back to, you are reaching out and you're kind of mining the soil of the hearts and souls that are in front of you, trying to find that common ground in them rather than you bringing it. And every chapter just keeps going back to, are you really curious about them, or you just want to say what you want to say in this conversation?
Absolutely. That it really is a very challenging internal kind of like just in self-awareness that we're developing through this, for sure. So let's go over to the chapter, since you segued us there, in terms of the question I posted for discussion, which we can go with or not, is just, what are some ways that we can find common ground with our teachers? And then I thought maybe a little bit of a separate conversation is, how do we find that same common ground when we're working with either peer coaches or admin? is kind of to, you're doing the same, you're using the same tactics, but maybe some new ideas. So either one of those that, you want to talk about from the chapter, what stuck out to you?
I don't have my book with me, so I don't know the exact page number, but I just like the idea that our common ground is, and it goes back to like the beliefs that we talked to way back in our first week of discussion, is that we all do want what's best for students. I mean, no matter how much you think it may be a struggle, and especially in the times we're in now and people have different views on things outside of school, we want what's best for students. And I think keeping that in mind, even if someone wouldn't do it exactly the way you would in the classroom, again, letting that go, letting go of our assumptions, and just remembering that the number one thing we all share is we want what's best for our students. We want our students to succeed. I don't think anyone's in our profession not wanting students to succeed. So that's always a great starting point.
I kind of really took away from it is the common bonds outside of school. I think we can really put people into just a box of knowing them at school and not knowing them personally. And the statement that he says, the more you know about another person's story, the less possible it is to see that person as your enemy or a person that you have conflict with or to disagree with in various areas. So to search out the things instead of looking for what is not like you, because we do that. We support our thoughts or ideas, look for the things that we do have in common and find those things. I mean, I know for me, it's somebody's offering a pool party. Well, I really don't like pool parties. Okay. But I'm going to go because I realize that that's a time that people are socializing and you have that opportunity to develop common bonds.
Well, that reminds me too of your story that you told a couple weeks ago about your surprise party and how you're just trying so hard to just have personal conversations. And like the producer in us is always trying to be productive and talk about work and get something done. And I want to get it done and I can talk to you about it. And like, honestly, I find that my personal interests, like my hobbies, blend quite a bit with my work. And so if you want to ask me about something that what do I do on the weekends, and I tell you like, oh, well, I went to a conference this weekend, like all of a sudden I'm talking about work again. You're like, wait, I didn't mean to do it. So I think it is really important to do what you did, which was, mentally saying, don't talk about work, don't talk about work, don't talk about work. We can just, our passion can just kind of come out too much and be too much for people. I found that to be very true of myself. That's why I love hanging out with you guys. I feel like I don't feel that way when I'm with you. It's okay.
I can make everything in life come back around in coaching and work. Everything. So, a blessing and a curse.
Very true.
I just wanted to connect Mary Jane's acceptance of the pool party to the chapter that we read about bids. So someone was extending a bid to you, right? Asking you to this pool party, and you had a chance to turn away from the bid, but you didn't. And I think that's, that's a self-awareness again, going, let's see, let's make those connections. So good job, Mary Jane.
Thank you. We'll see how it's next week. We'll see how it goes. It would be terrible to say I'm praying for rain, but
That's hilarious. Okay, other things about the chapter that really struck you or made you think about ways to do common ground with teachers, these strategies that he gave us here?
I think with teachers, but you know what, on page 135, it says, in today's United States seems to be polarized by discussions. I mean, we are so polarized right now, and there's so much going on. It can't help but come into our classrooms and our, our profession and our teachers' conversations. And so I think this is more time than ever to look at the things that we do have in common and maybe not the things that we don't have in common, and to find the good in people. Rather than seeking out something to support my thing, which I believe, seeking, knowledge rather than support of my beliefs.
I think for me, my brain went kind of flip-flopped the chapter because he started with finding common ground and the I care. What was the acronym? Yes, I care, your interests, convictions, activities, roles, and experiences. And my mind went to some of the mistakes I've made this past year in trying to find common ground, because I think we can always think to the lowest common denominator of finding common ground of whining and complaining and the negativity around us. And somehow that bonds us when we can be miserable together. And I feel like I have definitely made mistakes on that course. And so as he was talking about common ground, my mind is back here going, but don't find the negative common ground. And then he, at the end, really brought that about the toxicity of being negative together. And so not that I have anything, it just was flip-flopped for me, which makes me really self-aware that maybe I can be too negative to going there right away. So just for me, the I care was really important, and the negativity to stay away from was really important.
I think that's so true. I that hit me too. The part where he did talk about the avoiding toxic connections on page 145. Because you know, you have to be mindful of your own venting, and you have to be mindful of who you're standing in front of and who you're talking to, because in our situation as coaches, I don't have a partner coach to vent to. So there's either admin or there's teachers, and neither of those people really need to be the ones that I'm sharing my venting with. So I have to be careful of that. And then the other thing is, as coaches, we often get hit in the face, like we talked about with chapter 8, with the toxic emotions of other people. And we have to know what to do in that situation, especially when I first started coaching, like realizing, first of all, wait, why are they so upset? And it feels like they're mad at me, but they're not actually mad at me. They're upset with often the change that's being asked of them or some other situation. So just being the one that they might come vent to means that you've automatically landed yourself in this toxic conversation, and you got to figure out how to get out of it. But you also have to figure out how to get out of it without hurting anybody's feelings, and without letting that teacher know that, you're still trying to let that teacher know that you're going to support them and help them, but you're not trying to engage in the vent. And that may be the hardest thing for coaching, that you're usually caught. I call it the swirl. Then just comes swirling at you, and you're stuck in it, and you don't know how to get out. So it's been a tricky thing, and so that one definitely hits home for me. And trying to avoid them, but often you can't even avoid them. So I think it's about having the strategies to get out of that conversation, get out of the negativity. Redirect it to positive. And I think too, also personality matters here. Like if your personality is not very positive minded, then you're quickly going to go funneling down into the negative with that person. And so we have to be super self-reflective of our own positivity and how we can bring things back up. And then if things aren't changing as fast as we want them to, we want things to change. We want things to get better. We have to be positive that they will change. If we put in the work, the change will happen. So anyway, that to me is definitely the part around here that's super hard in this chapter for me. Or not hard, but just like the hard thing to work around is finding that common ground, but not venting.
I really liked also the pledge, the milestone pledge on page 141. And I thought, wow, what a helpful verbal affirmation. And I know sometimes I need to say things out verbally. So I thought, I'm going to print that out and I'm going to put them in the front of my coaching binder. And I'm going to read that before I go into meetings, at least for the first semester. And to those I know that conflict or things may arise that, the tough ones. And sometimes we can see those coming, just so that I can remember when I walk in that my mind's in the right spot.
I loved the quote from Longfellow on page 144. If we could read the secret history of our enemies, we should find in each man's life sorrow and suffering enough to disarm all hostility. Oh, I thought that was so lovely. And absolutely, if we could have compassion and empathy for each other, I think that would just be such a wonderful start.
Well, I think, yeah, it's just kind of the fact that everybody, everybody is sinful. Everyone has sin within them. And so we know that nobody is perfect. So, coming into it with that mindset that we're not expecting anyone to be perfect and that we can love them for who they are, is really vital in all of this. I think sometimes too, I struggle with, and I know there's all these different ways to find common ground, but sometimes I struggle with the teacher that I just cannot seem to find much common ground at all. Like I still find myself finding one or two of those where I'm like, oh, I'm still struggling to find it. Let's try another conversation, because that's what you're saying. Just another conversation might get us somewhere where we can find that common ground. What about with admin? What kind of made you think about connecting with administrators around these ideas as well? Partnering with them. Maybe going back to what Jessica said about those initial beliefs that we talked about at the beginning of our time together, and we talked about his partnership principles and then the coaching beliefs. And we've talked a lot about trying to facilitate conversations with administrators, but maybe having them talking with them about some of these things as well. Still love Shelley's tactic of making copies of pages and putting them in front of people and reading them together. I'm going to steal that one.
So Audrey is my liaison to the state. So she worked with my school, and she was kind of over my school, kind of in a boss way, but not so much. She's much more with the state. But when I first started, she gave my admin and she gave us pieces of paper that were just like contracts for us to have discussions over and talk about boundaries just between us and the coaching realm. And my admin and I hit it off really well on a personal level, but we didn't stick to those. We didn't talk much about what does your coaching role look like. And so I would love to go back and revisit some of those things, because the personal connection was great. But as far as what are we expecting of each other here in the school, I would have loved to talk more about those. And Audrey gave us some great resources for that. I think we went over too much on the personal, not so much on the, what we would do.
That kind of is a good point about finding common ground, because, sorry, I think we're going. Will you mute that? There we go. Because sometimes we can find common ground too much on the personal side, and then we have trouble breaking through to the work because the personal side seems to be the only thing that we're connecting over, or that we're connecting over so much that we don't have time for the work piece. I've had that situation with teachers, but also with admin relationships where you just really connect well with somebody. So you kind of, you're not as intentional with them about here's the goal we're working towards, because it's just such an easy relationship. And I know that can happen on both sides. And I also was thinking about that idea of role establishing with your admin, because I'm working on my presentation for the Simply Coaching Summit. And it's just this idea of like, as the coach, we have to own that part. Like we would naturally expect the administrator to own our role in our job description, given that they're in charge of us and they're our direct report. But what I've found is that it's really my job to bring that to the administrator and then facilitate that conversation. And if I don't, No one else is going to start facilitating it for me. Just, I mean, I've only, had a few different, well, even in my last school and this school, I have work in multiple divisions. So I have multiple principals that I'm working with, even though I'm only in one school. So just with different principals, nobody is coming to me and saying, here's your job. Here's your role. Here's what I want you to do. Every time I feel like I'm showing up to a meeting and I'm asking them, or I'm telling them, here's something that I can be doing with your teachers. And I just think it mostly is because the admin doesn't know what the coach's role is outside of an administrative, like evaluative type of role. So we have to kind of say, here's where I can support. And then I know I've definitely found that it's my job to keep a very protective umbrella over the idea of instruction and stay under that. Because if I don't, then I'll be doing all the other things in the world, which at this school, when I first came in, I know that a lot of you have too, you're doing all sorts of things that are not really your job. And I don't want to say no because I'm too much of a helper to say no, but this is not my role. So re-anchoring to that even mid-year and I actually recommend like a weekly meetings with admin to just touch base with them and re-anchor to the things that you're working on and your role so that you have the opportunity to to help them see what it is. And at this school I was able to kind of stay out of curriculum sometimes and really stay under the instruction umbrella. But I have to work really hard for that because otherwise I'll be in curriculum, I'll be in curriculum mapping, I'll find myself in technology, I'll find myself in these areas that overlap with coaching, but it's not true coaching, and have to set some clear boundaries. And anyway, basically what I'm saying is I've found that it's my own job to keep those boundaries and say, this is my role, not this. So I'm going to be working on this. So I know that as new coaches, it's hard to feel like you can step up and explain that to your admin, but it really feels like it's our responsibility.
I will say, echo that totally, because when I came, the principal came, who was a long-term employee of the district, but not with a lot of elementary experience, and she's the elementary principal. So I'm like the go-to person, and I've been putting in a lot of administrative parts, which I really don't want, because she's like, well, I really don't know. What do you think? I haven't seen this a lot. What do you think? And doing a lot of jobs that aren't necessarily at all to do with coaching, and it seems like my coaching falls to the wayside. Because, as coaching goes, it's not as black and white, set in stone. It's very fluid. And so it seems like the fluid stuff doesn't get looked at as much. And so I'm trying to figure out how to back my way out of some of it. But I don't know how to do this, especially after COVID, because now everybody is on a huge budget crunches and numbers, and there's not enough money. And, so you're looking at, so it makes it more complicated.
That's really complicated. The job security thing is seriously real in our roles because we feel peripheral, even though we're vital. Somebody on a budget line might think we're peripheral, and that's not okay. So we have to let them know.
That's exactly right. And we have a new superintendent coming on, and I don't know anything about this person, and we're tight on budget. So I hate to say no to anything because I want to appear worth, even though I know that one job is worth it. I don't know this person, and yeah.
We're going to be in a similar situation, Mary Jane. As our superintendent, who was my principal when I first started teaching, and is the reason I'm still teaching, announced she's going to be retiring. And so there's just some question, like, is it going to be internal? Is my current boss, our curriculum director, is she going to be taking it? Or is it going to be someone outside? And if then she takes it, who's going to be overseeing us? So yeah, there's a lot of unknowns. And like Lauren and I, my counterpart, we both feel like, hey, like, have we justified our job? Like, are we, are we showing like that this is what we need? So, yeah, it's scary, the unknown and the changes. And like, we just found out, so we have no idea who it's going to be. So I wish you luck, but know that I definitely empathize with you that I'm going to be in the exact same situation.
Can I throw out a question going way back to the beginning when we did the Mentimeter? I'm seeing that you guys are thinking about summer PD. And my question just for you guys, is that something that you as coaches are responsible for delivering? Is that a mindset that your admin says, okay, the coaches will be not so much in a one-on-one role with teachers, but in a class delivering PD for the whole school? Is that just, I'm wondering how that works with you guys.
We are already starting to think about what our PD is going to look like in fall. We always call them the days in August, you know, the couple days that staff has to come before. There's been kind of a little bit tougher to get some teachers to do it over the summer. And I think there's going to be less over the summer this year because of the COVID and unknown and where it would be and what it would look like. But yeah, so we're thinking more for next year, and yeah, providing PD for teachers is something that's considered part of our job. Some PD I did last year, at the beginning of the year, we had a ton of new hires last year. So I met with the secondary teachers and went over our literacy initiatives and things like that, and showing them, we use Newsella in our district, kind of like reviewing that, the Google Suite and things like that. I also was trying to work with some of the secondary, with both secondary schools, with disciplinary literacy and, you know, try to incorporate it within. And, oh yeah, Emmett. Okay. Emmett wanted part of that too. So yeah, PD is considered part of it. And that was, you know, when we've been meeting with my boss weekly, she's been telling us, you know, think about what PD you want to provide next year. And so we're kind of open with it. And that's considered part of it, whether it's part of the back to school for staff days or with department meetings or PLCs. We're actually going to be putting staff meetings on the same day as our PLC days now. Imagine that. So we'll have a very big chunk of time to be able to work with teachers and what that might look like.
I think ours is different. I really have had to fight for any sort of professional development to lead that. And that's because we're a K-12 school, a small district. I am the only coach in the entire district, and I'm only pre-K-4. And there is no other coach, no other. And a lot of our professional development, the current superintendent and principals have more so taken over as a whole school idea. And so then therefore, we are also part of a service center. We're divided into service centers, and a lot of times our service center will provide professional development. But I do some, and the only summer professional development that technically I'm doing is we have a phonics curriculum that's pretty intensive and it's hard to learn. We have 2 new teachers, and it's normally a 5-day workshop all day that they go to, but now it has to be virtual, and it's going to be a very difficult thing to learn virtually. So they are coming to my classroom. We are doing it virtually from my room, and I'm going to be the on-site person to guide them with the virtual PD to kind of make it more meaningful for them. But I'm in a really tough district where, unless I'll just be blunt, unless they are paid and it is in their contracted hours and it is within their contract, that's the only way that it will be done. They will not go beyond contracted hours or contracted time.
Yeah, so this is the first year that I've been a 12-month employee. I guess last summer was my first, but we started in July. So as a 12-month employee, I feel like my role shifts a little bit in the summer PD piece. And I hadn't, in the past, I didn't really offer much, certainly nothing that's was full-blown training. I would just kind of meet with new hires one-on-one to kind of help onboard them. But with this new role, and being that I was a 12-month employee, and then that this 40 hours of reading piece came up for the recertification, I offered to do these PLCs. There's so much to be done with our teachers that I felt like it was going to be worth the time. And if we could get these conversations going in the summer, I think we could see real change happening in the school year. And for the lower school teachers, it's much more technical, detailed things because they are really going to actually implement guided reading, and they have been already, but need more guidance on it. So So in terms of offering that, I can, kind of comes back to what we were saying before. As a coach, I had to come in and say, this is the training I think we should do. And then they said, okay, go ahead. Right. So nobody's really asking me to do that training. But I felt like it was going to be really valuable. And it did come out of like a need that was expressed, but I designed it from there. So it's kind of a blend of that. But if I was not a 12-month employee, I would be making sure I was being pretty protective of my summertime, because my own personal vigor and passion about doing my work all the time means that I would be overworking myself, given that I wasn't going to be, technically working during the summer. So it shifted a little this year for me, because now being a 12-month employee. And if I wasn't doing the PLCs, I would be trying to touch base with teachers and meeting with them. They're trying to make me laugh. Meeting with them one-on-one as much as I could to help them prep for next year. So that I'm still trying to do if they're willing to meet with me one-on-one. But the beauty is virtual, because I wouldn't be asking them to come into the building. They're not going to come in, but they'll hop on a virtual call with me. And this is changing everything for us. So long answer to your question, but this virtual has opened the door to the professional development for us.
I should add that any of the planning that we do in the summer, or when we come in to do like summer training before a school, we do get paid for it. It's written into our Title II budgets for us to get paid for it, to kind of do that planning and stuff. But I still do stuff all summer, that just because that's the way my mind works too.
Same boat. I don't get anything extra. I'm a 9-month employee, but I do a lot of work over the summer. And just because I know that it makes myself a nicer person and a better parent and in the fall when life comes crazy, so I know that the work ahead, it has its rewards. Though I am advocating for myself to try to get some more days paid for.
So Shelley, does that answer some of your question? I don't know what your situation's like, but.
Well, yes, that definitely helps me. We have district literacy specialists who are offering many, many different courses, from social and emotional to reading the pacing guides to playing. Like for kindergarten, they're offering a whole class on the importance of play. But that's not something that we have been asked to do, but something that my admin, when I began the role, offering PD on a monthly basis in my school was definitely an expectation. And I really would say that those were difficult days only because I was somewhat tasked with bringing the whole workshop approach to our school, which was brand new. And so during those PDs that I would present, it almost would turn into a conflict of, there's the staff and they are against what this is, they're not feeling this, and I must present. And it turned it into somewhat of me in an authority way, where you must do this, rather than rather than a coaching role where it's one-on-one and we're having all these wonderful conversations. It's more of me coming in as a specialist saying, this is the way we're going to do things. So going forward, I don't know how much leeway I can ask to say, can I please not do those anymore? Could I do them one-on-one with each individual teacher and more talk about this approach in that way, rather than presenting it as, here's just something new you have to sit through for an hour on a monthly basis. So that's just kind of a conversation in my head I'm having, that I don't know if I could broach that with my principal and ask if I could do it differently, and wondering how other coaches do that piece.
Well, a funny story, that I brought the workshop I did at our school as well, and was very new. And since you all are professionals, and I realized that in our district, we had a situation of a staff member who had an addiction problem and came to school under the influence. And I was asked last year to go and teach all morning in this classroom with her, because of yeah, it was an interesting situation. And so during that, I went ahead and I kind of did the ELA portion, and I taught the workshop approach and then invited all of the other teachers in the building to come in and see it. And it actually, besides the reason it was created to do that, besides that issue, having them come in and watch and do it was really great. And there was a whole grade level who really embraced it and have taken it a step further and have become real vocal about how much they love it and how their kids are having choices. And so it really was a blessing to take a kind of a situation that was a little bit negative to begin with, to turn and invite them in to the classroom that I was teaching. And it wasn't like I was presenting to you knowing more. You can come in and watch. So I don't know if you have that opportunity available.
I love that. We did one, Audrey actually came to my school and we did a learning lab. We called that process a learning lab, where we all had just a little bit of PD in the beginning of the day. And then we created lessons and we went into each other's classrooms as we team taught. So I taught with the teachers, Audrey taught with the teachers, and we all did it together. And it was so impactful, and it was such a learning experience. And the feedback that we got from the teachers was that it was just wonderful. And that was so much better than me standing in front of them presenting what this should look like in your classroom. And so I love that. I definitely, and the admin saw, they were a part of that day. And so they got to see the growth and the learning. And so that's excellent. That is a way I could have that discussion. Maybe could we bend it more toward the learning lab experience rather than PD?
Well, we talked a little bit a few weeks ago about, facilitating those learning, those opportunities where faculty is there, but creating, an opportunity to facilitate thinking around some article or book snippet or something that might make it so that you're not the content is not coming from you necessarily. It's coming from, that's what's working well with this PLC that I'm doing with Book Love, is I could be saying all the same things that Penny Kittle is saying about what high school teachers need to be doing and how they could incorporate, but that would not come across well because it's me and I'm not a high school teacher, and but them reading the book and reading it alongside the team has been, eye-opening, and lots of questions are coming out. And so the content is not coming from me, but I can reinforce and help guide them towards the different topics. So, trying to, if you are asked to facilitate PD, try to take a whole different approach to facilitating PD and facilitate rather than train. And so I actually think there's a conflict between our job as coaches and then this idea of training, because they are different things. And so that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, how do you be a coach but not train, but then kind of remove yourself from that other role, but you need the opportunities to lead sometimes whole group meetings so that you can get to the coaching conversations that happen afterwards. And so I think trying to, if you do need to lead a presentation, finding ways to facilitate, make them do the thinking, and really use all your coaching moves, but use them in the whole group setting, and try to not be presenting the content as much as they are just processing content, talking to each other, thinking about it together, writing things about it, like you might get your students to do. So I think it's just a shift in thinking about, well, I have to present this PD. Maybe a different style of presenting can do a little bit of supporting that kind of shift in the way they see you, the way you want to be seen by it. I've always had a little bit of a conflict with that, with the training versus coaching. They are not the same thing, but you find yourself in both roles. All right, ladies. Well, we've gotten kind of, any other thoughts on finding common ground that we want to mention before we wrap up here? Maybe we could just say what's most useful to you about this chapter and this, especially during this, our response to crisis is where this conversation book study started. So if there's something you want to share that's most useful to you to wrap up, we could do that.
I'll share the quote on page 146. I feel like this is kind of the quote for the whole book for me, but I really enjoyed this particular chapter. And here's a quote from it. Finding common ground is not a cheap trick to build connection, but rather a way to respect and validate those with whom we interact, especially those who hold views that are different than our own. And like I said in the beginning, it just constantly goes back to, are we truly curious? Do we want to honor and respect the people with whom we're having conversations?
I think I had mine was it's funny, it's on the same page as that, but it's finding common ground is a habit to build unity with others by seeing positive ways in which we are alike.
One piece that's going to stick with me had to do with the use words that unite, avoid words that divide, but just being very, very aware of the word choice. Like just some of the simple changes to say we instead of I, yes instead of no, and instead of but. About, saying, how can I support you? How can we work together instead of helping you? Just being really aware of the word choice, because that will also invite people and give some bids and invite people to want to work together to find that common ground.
Yeah, I feel like all of this goes back to what we talked about in the questioning chapter when he says that, questioning techniques are great and all, but it really is the mindset. And so the mindset that you're going into conversations with is the message of this book, but it just continues to hit home with me. It's about how you're going into it, and it's about how you're going to enter into it. And being super careful of realizing that, like, if you are at a high level of emotion for whatever reason, maybe something's going on at home or something's frustrating you, whatever, if you're coming in with a high level of emotion to any conversation, you're not going to be able to have the mindset that you need to really coach the way you want to. And so much of this is about that self-awareness and about the ability to recognize your mindset, the ability to realize that you could be frustrated and maybe you're not entering into it the way you want to. And just kind of such an awareness around how you want to enter into the conversation as a coach. And having that, again, Michael Bungay Senior is just in my head, just the coach-like, just being more coach-like all the time in every conversation just continues to be a big takeaway for me. I really love all the pieces that we're talking through, but this is the thing that I think sticks with me the most when I'm trying to figure out, what is it about coaching that is different or really just touches my heartstrings. And I think that it's that. I think that it's just that this is so much about the mindset and the mindset shift that it requires. And then coming into it with that's the thing that makes it feel different than training to me. Like, what is, I could be a trainer. I could just teach people. I could tell people what to do, but I really like this approach. And I really feel like when I'm interacting with people that I'm actually helping them. Like, I can train them, but as we know from Jim's research, you can train them in a PD and they will leave and not implement anything that you train them on. Not because you didn't do a great job, but because PD doesn't transfer. Coaching is the bridge that goes to transfer. And I just feel like if you really want to help somebody potentially make change in their practice, but maybe also in, whatever other ways they might need to be making change, that coaching is the way to do it. So I get really passionate about it because it just seems to be the answer to a lot of questions. How do you make change happen? Coaching mindset. Oh, so that's always a big takeaway for me. Because we're getting so close to the end of this book, y'all. We already read chapter 8, which was great. And then he's going to finish with building trust. And then we're going to have to figure out which book we're going to do next. So next week will be our last week on Better Conversations, and we'll read Building Trust, which is chapter 9. And then maybe we'll just think about when we, what other book we might want to do and when we might want to take a break and start again. Because I'd love to get a lot more people to join up with us. Just like we had, by the way, we had over 75 people sign up for this book study. So it's been exciting that we've had all this interest. I'd love to have, some more coming into the live sessions, but time is just, all we can do is pick an hour a day. Not everybody can be here. But it's been, that's, high interest of coaches for sure. 75 coaches wanting to join our conversation and it being valid for them. So I thank you guys so much for showing up week after week and really just digging in. It's been really, really great. So I know our last chapter will be good. We need to do some kind of celebration next week. We should do something. I'll have to think about it, like an ice cream party or maybe a celebration hat or something that we can wear and celebrate.
Well, thank you. I've appreciated all your time on it. And it's, like you said, it's a lonely job that you can have. And it's great when we can gather together and connect and understand each other and our joys and our sorrows of a calling.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Yes. Thank you so much for leading this. This has been wonderful.
Yes, thank you. I look forward to this every single week. Even my husband's like, "Oh, it's the call you really like." I'm like, "Yes, it is."
This is the one we like.
That's great. That's great.
All right. Well, ladies, I hope you have a fantastic afternoon, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next week for sure. And if you have some kind of awesome idea about how we can celebrate next week, pop it into the Voxer, and we'll come up with a fun idea for closing this out for next week.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, ladies. Thank you.
Bye, guys.